Real conversations with real people that have chosen a life of positive impact in business and community. This is Leave It Better with Brandon Trammell. Tauna Dean, welcome to the show. Welcome,
Thank
everybody. I am beyond excited to be having this conversation with you. You and I have known each other for a little while now, been connected through social media, and more recently we've actually had some direct contact, and I've just been super inspired by your journey and everything that you're working on now, and I'm so excited for you to be able to share that with my audience. And it's let's start at the start. Now,
Okay.
you worked with Adidas for many years.
Yes.
And I want you to share some of that experience, because if I understand correctly, that may have kind of led you to where you are now a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
So tell us about your work and your roles with Adidas and what that was all about.
Okay, I absolutely will. First, I want to say thank you for having me, Brandon. I know this has been a long journey to get to this moment today, so thank you so much. One entrepreneur to another. It's not easy to align calendars. And yeah, I'd love to talk about Adidas. It was a huge part of my life, 15 years with the brand. I love the brand. I will always be very devoted to the brand. But really, the odyssey in purpose and the work I do today with Kind World Collective, which is my new company, started before Adidas. So let me just go there.
Okay.
And then we'll jump into my time at Adidas.
Origin story. Go for it.
And I promise this won't be a long story, even though it is.
We've got plenty of time.
It does start 25 years ago. But basically, Brandon, I, when I left college, I started in social work, and that's the work I wanted to do with my life. And I began a career as a case manager for a women's crisis center at a very rural crisis center in Oregon, which is where I live now. Mm-hmm. And I did that work for a couple years, and the work was obviously very challenging, very emotional, very intense. But the thing that I found the most joy in, and I'll say this as I'm working with women in crisis, being abused both through domestic violence and also sexual violence. So very, very difficult, challenging situations. But where we found joy together was actually helping women find financial independence so they could leave those toxic and difficult situations. And so one of the things I just started to do, and it was very innate and natural, is I just helped them look for jobs. Like, hey, can we get you working at the neighborhood grocery store? Or can we get you working somewhere where you can start to build some financial independence and freedom, and ultimately, be able to leave this situation with your children and care for yourself and your family. So I share that part because I didn't know that was a job. Like, helping people find jobs was a job, especially in such, a tumultuous situation. So I later learned, after a few years as working as a case manager with this women's crisis center, was that there was a profession called recruiting. And I happened to meet someone that said, I think you'd be really good at this. And I had actually, been thinking about my career in social work and just how taxing it was. And not to sound selfish, but I really, realized quickly that I may need to do something different. And I lit up at the idea of jumping into recruiting. And there's a lot that happened in between the Women's Crisis Center and my role with Adidas. But ultimately, I was hired at Adidas to join at the Global World headquarters in Herzogenaurach, Germany, as a senior manager in recruiting. And so I landed in Germany. I knew nobody. I was single, all alone, early 30s, all of that stuff. And I was like, what have I just done? This is really scary, right?
I can imagine.
Yeah. And I was so proud of being, hired and invited into this opportunity with Adidas. But I was also like, I had a full life back in Oregon. I just picked up and left it. So all of that to say, gosh, when people take those leaps, I always respect it with my whole heart because it's not easy to do. Anyway, moved to Germany, ended up being the most amazing experience of my life outside of motherhood, having my daughter, which happened a few years ago. And I was able to help Adidas build their first in-house recruiting function with a couple other senior leaders, and it was just incredible. First there were 3 recruiters, then there was 20, then there was 50, and we grew to hundreds, and we really built this competency and function for the brand that did not exist before this team joined forces and started to build it together. So did that for about 5 years. Brandon and I lived in Germany and loved every moment of it, traveling around Europe, all the things you can imagine. Mm-hmm. And then in 2013, I believe, I came back to the US and I was asked to head up recruiting for North America and also to start the first in-house executive search function. So what that is, for people that don't know, is, when Adidas is looking for top talent, they want to make sure that they have the best recruiters looking for those individuals and representing the brand. And so I was able to start that function for Adidas and help them hire a number of senior leaders across the globe. All right, I know this is getting lengthy, so I'm going to jump in.
This is all origin story, right? And this is one of the things that I love about our format on the show is that, we're just here to have conversation. However that conversation meanders or however long it takes is just how it goes. So don't worry about it.
We're in the thick of it now, and we're going to get to present day here pretty soon, but I appreciate that. After, helping Adidas in North America build the executive search function and grow the recruiting function here, I started to really yearn to get back to my roots of social impact and community work and social work. And I didn't really know what to do with that. And I kept saying to myself, you have one of the coolest jobs on earth, Tauna. How could you possibly be looking for something else? But I had done that for 10 years and it felt like time. So as the universe would have it, and I really believe in this, I was sort of at the right place at the right time. Of course, I went through a stringent interview process, but I caught wind of Adidas wanting to build another new function called social purpose. And essentially what social purpose was an opportunity to live our core belief, Adidas's core belief. Through sport, we have the power to change lives. And I loved that. And I saw all the opportunity and potential in that. And I was like, this is my role. So I raised my hand, went through that interview process and ended up helping Adidas launch yet a new function, social purpose, and build from, again, just a couple employees to a large team working globally to really galvanize our employee base around purpose and to ensure that, we're living that core belief, not just putting it on PowerPoints and writing it on walls and talking about it in podcasts, but really actually doing that work in the community. So that was an opportunity of a lifetime. I did it for 5 years. I worked with some of the most wonderful people you could ever imagine that I still keep in touch with. But around 2021, and I know every person listening to this story has a version of this, everything changed. Yep, watershed moment. Everything changed. Everything upended. For me personally, I had a 6-month-old baby when the pandemic hit. I was working around the clock on a number of pressing and important initiatives that were coming to Adidas given the pandemic and also the tragic murder of George Floyd, a number of other number of other things that were happening politically and the turmoil in the country at the time. So I was in it and I was proud to be in it, but I also knew there was something else calling me. And so in 2021, I did make the decision to take yet another leap and get into the space of entrepreneurialism. So that's where you find me today. It's been a couple years, and I'm happy to talk more about that and Kind World Collective. But it tells you a bit about how Adidas shaped that story and was a huge part of my life to land me where I am today.
And, I think it's really important for us to acknowledge something that exists out there, right, in the world of business. And I think we've seen it happen a lot in, I'd say, over the last maybe 5 or 6 years, where companies come out in a very performative way to hold out how important social values are, environmental sustainability, right? A lot of times we hear this called greenwashing or purpose washing, right? Where companies will hold out that flag and do very performative things without really putting any meat on the bone, right? Of actually building in values to the way that they operate both internally and externally, having programs and actual, meaningful action on their part about doing those good things rather than just saying those good things.
Right.
And so, it's sort of our generation and after that have really said enough is enough. I'm not going to spend money with companies that I know are causing harm socially and environmentally,
right.
or in any way. Right? They're voting with their dollars, and they want to put their money where their values are. They want to spend money with companies that have meaningful, purposeful initiatives in place, both internally and externally, to do some good in the world.
Yes.
In which, that world has created a ton of profit for them. And they want to see those companies giving back. So
100%. Yeah. And I have to say, I really will hand it to Adidas because they started internally first. They said, if we're going to talk about this being a belief, then we better live it and own it and act it in our communities and, with the communities that need us most. And also communities that we've leveraged for our own success and our own growth. And so I will say it's never perfect, and I don't think we did it perfectly. I don't think any team is doing it perfectly. But I will say that the most important thing for brands that are in the space of purpose or that believe in doing that good work is really to look at yourself internally first. And start to grow that, that purpose and that intent and those values and ethos internally before you turn the microphone externally and talk about all the great things that you're doing.
So flash forward to current day, and you have started a purpose-driven recruiting firm called Kind World Collective.
Correct.
Tell us a little more about Kind World Collective. And in sort of a piggyback way, right, as we have just sort of mentioned how companies can be quite performative in the way that they show up behind these kinds of initiatives. What makes Kind World Collective unique in the way that you're supporting the candidates, right, and really leaning into and deepening that purpose, and then also, or their connection to that purpose, and also then the companies that you're working with? And what makes you so special? Because you are extremely special in the way that you do it. So I want everybody to know about that.
Well, I appreciate that, Brandon. I mean, so I'm I talked about the universe before. I don't want to get too esoteric here, but I will tell you that when I left Adidas and I was having that, oh my God moment, single mom, what am I going to do? I've got to figure this out. There was something that just kept calling me to the space of purpose-driven recruiting. So it really, truly was the full alignment of my two worlds, which is why I went through my background at length to really, I think, hopefully educate people that what an interesting winding journey that can, in some weird way, unite in the perfect way and space when the timing is right. And so because I had worked in recruiting and then I had worked in social impact, I saw the opportunity to unite those two professions and those two passions. And what was happening was I just kept getting calls from people. Hey, Tauna, I heard you left Adidas and you're kind of doing your own thing. Would you help us build this company? We need to hire a number of people. It's a purpose-driven brand. We know you'd love what we're doing. And, oh, hey, Tauna, could you help us? We just need to hire one or two folks, and it's a really strategic hire, and we could use your counsel and your consulting on this. So I share that just because I'm imagining people are listening going, well, what is purpose, and how do you find it, and how do you know? And there are some things, and we have methodology, which I'll talk about later, I'm sure, but really it's about intuition and getting quiet with yourself and then noticing the signs that keep popping up once you're on that path that is the right, or let's say, I don't know, ordained, I don't know how we want to put that, but the right path for you at that time. So I kept, in my example, I just kept getting asked to do this work, and I was like, ooh, there's just something here, and I've got to explore it further. So to answer your question, Brandon, when I started to sort of do the work quietly and really think about how I wanted to build a company that would be truly purpose driven, where I could show measurable impact, because those are the types of clients and candidates talent that I want to work with. And I started to think about our values. I want to be very human, very compassionate, very human centric, and very much committed to purpose. And so it always starts there, right? With yourself. What type of human do I want to be? And then what type of company could that translate into? And then I started thinking about sort of more of the external measures of how could we walk the talk internally. So one of those measures is becoming a member of the 1% for the Planet movement, which I think is just incredible. Are you familiar with it, Brandon?
Very. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. So, 1% for the planet, I think the last number I saw was it was like 500 million in certified giving to environmental causes, something like 6,000 businesses around the world who have become 1% for the planet members, and then like 7,000 environmental impact partners, nonprofits, if you will, that we're working with. So what you do is you give 1% of your annual revenue back to 1% for the planet, and they're dispersing those funds to environmental partners that are creating, positive impact. So that was important to me to become a member of that community. And then the second thing is becoming B Corp certified. And I'm sure a few of the listeners know about the B Corp certification process. It's not for the faint of heart, and it shouldn't be, because you want to make sure you're doing it right. And, I find it so interesting that I'm someone who came from that world, and even me in building my own company had some eye-opening aha moments of, man, I guess we weren't doing that quite right. Okay, let's rewind a little bit and figure out how we can do that better. So, B Corp and B Lab are looking at building the highest standards of social and environmental performance, transparency, and accountability for the companies that they work with. And you go through a certification process to make sure that you're, well aligned with those initiatives and those standards. So I share all of that to say, I just didn't want to build another recruiting firm. And my friends laugh at me because they're like, in some ways, you're building the most recruiting firm out there. And I love that because it's true. I actually am not traditional in a lot of ways, personally and professionally. And I want to build something that feels different than, as you said, maybe special, although I'm not sure about that. But I think, something that feels different, that really is providing value to our candidates and our clients. And so that's the journey I've been on.
Man, there are just so many parallels in our stories. And, the listeners have heard me and my guests talk about 1% for the planet and B Corp certification, B Lab, probably more times than I can even count. Because, obviously, right, the amazing entrepreneurs that I have on this show are folks who are concerned with these areas, right? Their social impact, their environmental impact, how they give back to the communities that so willingly support them. It's a critical measure, right? The B Corp certification is a very unique measure of how those impacts show up for all stakeholders, right, across our company's ecosystem, right? So it's no surprise that the way you've built it out is to be embedded in those values and those entities themselves, right, that really are fantastic measures of how we show up to walk the talk.
Yes.
And I just, also the parallels of, as you sat with yourself to really kind of come to what is this next step? In building out a feeling and an experience for those folks that you come to serve and support. It's all over every marketing piece and every social media page, right, that my company has, is that I really sought to build a different kind of experience for folks, right, in financial services. And you have done the same thing in your mission with Kind World Collective to build out a different kind of experience for people in being recruited and working with a recruiter to find talent for their company. And I say special because there aren't many. I can't think of any others. So I'll say there aren't many because I'm sure there are some, but there are none that I know of, no recruiting companies that I know of that have the kind of processes that you have and the very embedded, purpose-driven orientation to both sides of the recruiting process, both for companies and for candidates. So tell us a little more about that. How, because you, as something that I think you very astutely pointed out, right, is that purpose is kind of this very nebulous concept. Like, how does one find their purpose? And, what does that mean? And what does it mean to be a purpose-driven company? So maybe share with us a little bit of how you help candidates to kind of lean into that, understand more of that for them. And then also, if you're helping companies to kind of refine their idea or modus operandi in being purpose-driven, how are you doing that?
Such a great question, Brandon. Thank you. First I have to just give a shout out to the team that I've built, that we've built together. It's no accident that my company is called Kind World Collective, because it's about finding the kindest humans I know that are really, really good at what they do and pulling them together, locking arms and being like, hey, let's go build this thing. Like, this is important. We can feel it. We know there's a legitimate need, and we know we're the people to do it. So my team, are recruiters from Nike and Adidas and Keen Footwear and Apple and Mars and Netflix, and they've all come to their own personal intersection in their life, this moment in their life where they're like, I'm really good at what I do, and I really care about helping people, and I want to do it under the umbrella of a company that also portrays those values, lives those values, and exercises those values through every touch point of the candidate or client journey. And so I just first want to say it's about my team and how incredible they are and the way they show up every day. And in terms of how we, the process that we undergo with candidates, I think and I'll talk about clients too, but I think it's so interesting, especially if someone's listening going, I don't really know what my purpose is. And actually, I love talking to those people because it took me a long time to really, I gave you a 25-year soliloquy about what I've done and where I've been. And I think purpose is always unfolding. I think you're always getting closer to it. The more you experience life, the more you do in life, the more risks you take, whatever it is, as long as you're staying very clear about what matters to you. So one of the things we do is I ask this question a lot, and it actually is not, I didn't come up with this. So all credit goes to Justin Dillon, who is a guy who wrote a book called A Selfish Plan to Change the World. It's an amazing book if you haven't read it. And Justin kind of challenges people in that book to be like, what's your riot? Like, what's the thing you care about the most? You might be watching the evening news. You might be sitting in a coffee shop and you've overheard something. You might be, I don't know, just talking with a friend and a topic comes up and your heart starts racing faster and you break out in a sheen of sweat and you're like, God damn it, I want to solve that problem in the world. Like, that's not okay. I feel motivated to do something about this. And when you can find that and tap into that energy, you're onto something with purpose. And so I ask people, hey, what's your riot? Let's find your riot. And sometimes people tell me, oh, climate change, or, it's gender inequality, or it's lack of education, or it's, clean water and sanitation. It could be anything, but let's get you aligned to that space, because therein lies some purpose for you, the motivating factor of how and why you do the work you do in the world. So a lot of the conversations I'm having with people start there. The other framework, if you will, or methodology that we use is something that's talked about a lot recently. We've been doing this for years, but Ikigai, which is all credit to the Japanese. I know you've talked about this before too, so I love it. I love the serendipity there. So finding, getting clear on your ikigai, which is a framework for really four things. I'll break it down quickly. I know you've spoken about it too,
No,
so I
go.
won't go at length, but
Save my breath.
we often ask people like, all right, let's just get clear on a few things. One is, what do you absolutely love to do? And it doesn't even have to be work related. Just what do you love to do? And then talk to me about what you're good at. I really do want to know, what are you good at? And then sometimes I'm really working with people to get clear on, what did someone tell you after a meeting when they patted you on the back? Did they say, gosh, you really helped us get organized around that concept, or you really set a new direction and tone, or just your energy, whatever it is? What are you good at? What do you naturally do? And then the other two are, what does the world need? So all those topics that I mentioned, a lot of them are aligned to the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. We use that framework a lot as well. But what does the world really need? And then what can you get paid for? And those things aren't mutually exclusive. In fact, they're mutually inclusive if you do it right. So once we find the quadrant and that space right at the intersection of all of those questions that we ask, again, now we're getting closer to purpose. And so we do that work with candidates just to kind of give you some insight and pull the curtain back a little bit. And those are pretty in-depth conversations. We use a lot of other methodologies as well, but it's deep work, it's vulnerable work, it's human work, and we love it. So it's not just finding a job; it's bigger than that, and it's really addressing that North Star. On the client side, I have to say it's going to sound so remedial, but it is what it is. It starts with listening. So recruiters often go into a client and tell you how great they are and everything they can do for you. And I've got that network, I've got that talent, I know that person. That isn't solving a problem for the client. The client needs you to just hear them, understand the landscape they're navigating, understand their purpose, their North Star, and then be able to kind of reverse engineer a plan together. So this is the second step, which is co-creation. So like, great, I understand now what your business imperatives are, what you're trying to accomplish, what the purpose of your organization is. Let's reverse engineer that to the type of person that you need to put in this role to help you meet or exceed those goals. And so that's a co-creation process that we do with our clients. And then it is about locking arms and partnering and making sure that we are talking to the people who really, truly get jazzed and energized and aligned to the purpose of that business. And that's a very in-depth process I won't take everyone through, but it takes sometimes weeks and months to find that individual. But we do it, and we do it with such genuine enthusiasm. We love it. It's why we're here. So I think that's a little bit about the process with both candidates and clients, and I think how much we invest in that space. It's really important to us.
Yeah. And it's just, it is no surprise, and it's certainly no accident, I think, that there is a shared love of that Ikigai framework between you and I. I mean, it's the basis for the logo for my company.
Yes.
I mean, it really is. And it is something that I hold very near and dear, because I think if every single one of us spent a little bit of time thinking about what falls into those four areas, then we would all lead a more fulfilling, joy-filled, and meaningful human existence.
I think so too.
Even if it's like, I'm in this job that, it's okay, but, I make good money, I have, steady income, and I can provide for my family and all of those things. And how do we take what we absolutely love doing and somehow weave in a way to get paid to do it? Because I mean, it's a very strong process to sort of guard against burnout. Yes. And, a sense of complete dissatisfaction with, our work. It's just really important. And I mean, it is absolutely, it should necessarily be, a very deep kind of personal conversation that you're having with these candidates. It absolutely should be, because, look, you can go to whatever level of work, on an individual level around your purpose in life. And, it doesn't have to be some grand esoteric kind of endeavor, right? You can go to whatever length or level you wish, but even if you just go one or two notches into that conversation with yourself, I think it's my belief that you're going to come out the other side of that conversation with a more meaningful day.
Yes.
And so to take your candidates through that process, to really narrow down for them what's important, what do you love doing, that I'm sure goes a great length to place them with the right company where they're going to thrive, contribute in a very meaningful way, because it's something that, as you put it, right, it's aligned with their riot. And it's something that's meaningful to them, and they get to do that day in, day out. And here's what all the big companies that have no attunement to this sphere are missing. If you want people to bleed, sweat, cry, and then go home and come back willingly and do it again the next day, there's got to be a connection to something greater than profit.
Yeah. Profit
is an imperative. We all understand that. We're entrepreneurs, we're in business, we get it. We all understand that profit is, you must be profitable to continue operating your company. But with a more meaningful and purpose-driven orientation to generating that profit, one that considers all the stakeholders of community members, the environment, your employees, yes, your customers, and yes, your shareholders, right? But when we consider all of those folks and we get input from all of those folks and we can galvanize all of them around a central purpose, man, that's the most sustainable orientation to operating a successful business you could ever think of. I mean, look at Patagonia.
Yeah.
A prime example. This is a company that has had values and environmental sustainability at the core of their operating basically forever. And I don't think, there aren't many clothing companies that can rival, what Patagonia has done in that sphere. They're just, the Chenard family has been a pioneer really in purpose-driven business and a shining example for a lot of us.
And I think, and just to touch on that, Brandon, I think Patagonia is the marquee board company, but I have to say there are so many other, companies, especially mission-driven startups they exist to solve a complex problem in the world. So the profit comes when you figure out, what problem am I trying to solve, and what will that do for all the stakeholders and across that supply chain that you just mentioned. What will that do to solve that problem and to create a better, better life for people or planet? So environmental or social impact. And I love those startups because those are the companies that I think are starting with that mission in the DNA, and they're doing it right. And you can look at a Patagonia and be like, oof, that's a shining example. And I love them. And I think they are, just an incredible beacon of optimism and hope for the rest of the organizations to get to. But I will say the smaller players don't get enough love, and they are doing some incredible work. And so we love to invest our time in helping those companies grow and scale, knowing that the entire business model is centered on purpose. And that we can really, and of course we work with companies outside of that are trying to get closer to purpose and really do that in a authentic and innate way. But I really have to say there's so many great organizations out there today that are growing and that are following the Patagonia example, but maybe don't get recognized or mentioned as much.
Yeah, and thank you for acknowledging that, because there are a lot of companies that I don't even know exist, right? So from somebody who is very connected to, right, supporting companies like that, right, through recruiting and other meaningful endeavor. It's really great to hear that, because it seems obvious, I think, right, that if you can begin from a place of purpose and sustainability and positive social impact, then it makes it much easier to continue forward in that vein, right? Rather than a larger company or a company with very entrenched and embedded kind of culture that may not necessarily be focused in the areas that we're talking about, right? Change is challenging and painful, right? It can be very difficult to change a company's culture, and certainly it takes a lot of time, right? That takes time and resources and very dedicated leadership. So
on the enterprise side, I feel like I have to mention that oftentimes, a company, and this happened a little bit at Adidas, it was really interesting. I remember asking the senior leadership when I was, heading up social purpose, I was like, what will success look like? Give me some guidance on how I can do this and do this right with this incredible team and 70,000 employees around the world. And they said, success looks like creating a culture of purpose. And I sat with that for a little while. And then I went out with my team and we started to build this function and engage our employees and get to know our employees and figure out what mattered to them. And I marched right back into the senior leadership office probably 3 months later and said, nope, I don't have to create a culture of purpose. I just had to uncover it. And all you have to do is uncover the purpose of your employees, listen to them. Back to the fundamental need of every human is to be listened to and heard. Listen to what's important to them, and then really organize them around that purpose and that passion and get them active in the community or doing work for the planet, whatever lights them up, whatever their riot is, or my friend Afdel Aziz likes to say, being in alignment with your assignment. So the thing you're supposed to be doing in the world, if you can galvanize, I love that word, I think that's absolutely true, and unite and really get people excited about that purpose and their own personal purpose and aligning that back to your business DNA, amazing things can happen. So it's really about uncovering it for those large enterprise clients. And we believe by placing talent in roles, whether it's a corporate social responsibility team or a sustainability team, or it's outside of that, placing purpose-led talent in those organizations will help you quickly uncover how you create and uncover purpose in your organization. And then just to quickly go back down to the other side of the continuum, mission-driven startups, you're looking for people that care about that specific problem. Like, what are you here to do? And we've recruited across those startups as well. So everything from, a company just starting out with 2-3 employees all the way up to, like I mentioned, an enterprise client, where they're really trying to build their ESG, corporate social responsibility purpose teams. So we kind of work across that continuum. And I share that only to say that you can change a culture from the inside out by putting the right people in the right places.
Yeah. I mean, my belief, and it is my understanding that purpose and connection to something greater than ourselves, whether that's a cause or whatever the case might be, is much like kind of this, the fungal network that pervades through soils, right? As human beings, we've only very recently even come to realize that that is the case literally everywhere, right?
Yes.
That those networks exist literally everywhere, but they've always been there.
Yes.
We've only just uncovered it.
Yes.
So my analogy here is that purpose and connection to operating in a way that considers something greater than just ourselves or just our profit was always there. It's just now being really uncovered. And I love that you said that, that a purpose-driven culture or purpose-oriented culture, mission-driven culture is already there. You just sometimes have to uncover it.
Yes, and unleash it.
Every human being that works for your company has something that is extremely important to them, that like if they could just wake up in the morning every day and work towards that thing or work on that thing, they'd be happy. Yes. They would be joyful to do it, to bleed, to sweat, to cry, go to bed, wake up and do it all over again willingly in the morning, you know? And that's what I think is missed by business 1.0, right? And in this business 2.0 era, right, with, I mean, Abdelaziz, that name is just a shining example as well of somebody who really understands what it takes to embed purpose-driven, you know, love-based culture in your companies and do good in the world through business. I read everything I can that he puts out. I, you know, subscribe to the newsletter and all of that kind of stuff. I mean, I love the work that they do. And it's, you know, no surprise to me that he's a friend of yours.
Yeah. Abdel and Bobby Jones and Helen Trickey, the whole team over at Conspiracy of Love. I do think they're pioneers in the space of helping companies understand how you uncover that purpose and how you do it really authentically and how it's actually a really beautiful process, not painful. You know, so many, I think, senior leaders, and I've spoken with them like, oh, we want to do it, but man, that's expensive. That's going to cause a lot of, you know, issues and turnover and political debates and challenges. I say rise above that. And, you know, when you look at words like kind World Collective, love, Conspiracy of Love, that's where you go. You go all the way up to the top, to that northern star of how we all want to show up in this world. And you start there. And that may sound fluffy to some people, but I'm telling you, if you can change your mindset a little bit and stop getting kind of stuck in the weeds and some of that internal debate that happens when you're just trying to figure out what the right thing is to do for all involved, you can do some special, incredible work. So I'll do the plug for Conspiracy of Love because I do really bow down to them and think they're you know, the best in what they do in terms of helping companies realize that purpose and helping them through that journey.
For sure, and worthy of your plug. And I'll be sure to share that plug with the world because I think it's just really important, right? And it comes into, it ties into really a core reason of why I started this podcast, right? Because as I was going through my journey of awareness and awakening to a better way to do business, and serving on the board of Conscious Capitalism Bay Area at the very beginning phases of that journey for me, what I realized was so many of us were just hungry for examples of who's doing this, how are they doing it, what have they learned along the way, what mistakes did they make that maybe I can learn from, and how can I start to take this idea, operationalize it, and take it to the office on Monday and start doing some good. And I realized that there is just not enough, for example, and here's my assertion why. A lot of us that are doing business this way or think about business this way aren't standing up on the mountaintop with a sign that says, look at all the good that we're doing. That performative sort of thing, right? So some of us are you know, doing it behind the scenes and are not out there carrying a flag and a sign to say, look at me and all the good that I'm doing. And so they're maybe not as recognized or acknowledged for what they're doing and how they're doing it. And so there's this humility, right, around it of good leaders, I think are often humble people, or they have a very strong character aspect of humility because they understand it's not about them, right? It's about something greater. And so, you know, really our main objective here on the show is to share with people stories of entrepreneurs and just everyday people that have gone about this mission and have started to embed these principles in the way that they do business and the way they engage with other businesses. So
And I have to say, Brandon, I love how you framed that, because I talk to those people every day, and that's my purpose. I really believe, like, amplifying someone else's purpose, what they're here to do, or the company that has a mission to do X, something good in the world. I could go down a huge list. My job is to sit at the intersection of those two and go, oh, this company and this person have to meet. And this is why, because it's the butterfly effect of those two coming together and what they will do in turn, given their shared purpose, their shared values, and what they want to accomplish in the world. So I love that you're pointing that out, because I often don't do these types of things. I think it took us a year to maybe even get
pretty damn close. Yeah.
We've been talking. I also share in that humility of, like, wanting to be behind the scenes, just putting my head down and doing the great work with my team. And our biggest wins, like, speaking of blood, sweat, and tears, there's times where we've kind of almost wept together when we have a big win, because we know how much heart we put into it and what that heart will do for the world. So it's not about us. It's about, like, that was a big one. That was a lot of work to make sure, that company found that talent, or that talent landed in that type of role. That's our mission, and connecting purpose and profession. But it's really when we step back and go, wow, that's so much bigger than us. And we're so proud to have played a small role in that process. My company's whole mantra is purpose-driven recruiting for a kinder, cleaner, and more connected world. And I know that's a big purpose. That's a big why. But we honestly see these small examples of connecting people for a kinder, cleaner, and more connected world all the time. And so it is about that humility and just putting your head down, or maybe, I don't know if the right word is just sort of putting your hand on your heart and going, this is what I'm supposed to be doing, and I'm going to help make this world a little bit better by doing this work. And I think that translates to a lot of the people listening. You can find that thing that you're supposed to be doing, do it with humility, do it with heart, do it with purpose, and you can create a better future. By the way, I think that's what we're all thinking about, is our children, your children, everyone's kids. What can we do for them? That's our role, is to pass that baton and make sure that we've, left it better than we found it. So that's what we're out here to do as well.
Man, I just firstly, I'm gonna tap you on the shoulder for that list, because I want to talk to those folks. I want to have them on the show too. So I would absolutely love to, if you'll do that for me. And I think it's very valuable for people to understand that it's not just someone being humble, right? That they're not walking around with a sign. It's because they're doing the goddamn work. They're just too fucking busy doing the work to walk around with a sign saying, look at all the work we're doing. And so, it's a lot of times it's behind the scenes, and those folks may not be getting credit or seeking credit. But they're really champions out there doing the work that's necessary for these things to take place and for these initiatives to be accomplished or spearheaded. I mean, you pointed something out that I think is really important, is like purpose is not a destination. It's not like, oh, I've arrived at my purpose and now I can move on. I mean, that's a constantly evolving thing. I know that it has been for me, right? And really leaning into, like, what is the purpose that I want to serve in the world, right? And even let's zoom in a little bit. What is the purpose that I want to serve for this client, for the experience that this person is going to have in my process, in their outcomes, right? What do I want to be for people that is missing? And in my industry, right, there's a lot missing, mainly humanity. That seems to be taken away from center stage, right? Numbers really are what my industry has boiled people down to, unfortunately. And that just never sat well with me. I'm a very people-oriented person. I'm very connected to the human being. I always have been. And so, for me, it was just, there's got to be a better way to do this. and for me to get paid doing it, right? It's not just, I mean, it's really important that we understand that making a good living is also a part of this, right? We want to do these good things in the world as we earn a good living and have a meaningful existence that doesn't put money at the center as the goal. Because, look, I've served quite a few people that have more money than a lot of those who might be listening today, right? Very wealthy individuals. And money has oftentimes been the center of their drive. What the goal is to make more money, to accumulate more. And they've done that successfully. And then as they're sitting in front of me and I'm asking questions that go down below the surface of that money, what's important to them, what's meaningful to them. And those conversations have ended, or at least ignited, tears because of a lack of meaning and substance. And that, I mean, those are joyful moments for me, honestly, that might sound weird, but with those tears, that's that true human being coming into connection with the fact that the way they've been operating and thinking about money has left them in a position where there's not a whole lot of meaning behind what they've been doing. Yeah. That's a catalyst moment, a watershed moment. And I'm sure you experienced that with your candidates too.
All the time, Brandon. And what I was thinking about as you were talking was how many people assume that we just work with the younger generation that cares, right? Like, I hear a lot of kids want purpose in their employment. And so you must be talking to like 22-year-olds all day long. And we are talking to some of those people and we're helping them identify, okay, great. What do you want to do in the world? But honestly, the people that are finding Kind World Collective on the candidate side are often very successful C-suite executives who have made a ton of money, have done everything you could possibly imagine, have the pedigree, have the connections and the network, and they are lacking purpose. And they've gone into or out of their professional journey and have looked at themselves and said, "Phew, what next?" And what am I going to do with this final chapter of my life and employment? And again, how am I going to leave this world better than it is today and better than the trajectory we're on? So oftentimes I'm talking to ex-CEOs that are like, so here's the rap sheet of all the awesome things I've done. And, all
I love a rap sheet. No, that's very well put. Yeah.
I'll call it a resume. Maybe that's probably more fitting. But it's everything I've done. And some of those things they're not proud of because they're like, oof, caused some real problems, environmental impact, social impact could, not super proud of that. But guess what? I have a chapter left in my career and I'm going to do something meaningful with it. And I want to create positive impact. So can you help me do that? And we're speaking with those folks saying, absolutely. But let's get clear on what that looks like. And so same fundamental process with them as we would with someone that is just starting in their career and that has that sort of baked in or innately a part of their upbringing. So I'm just sort of validating your point that there are a lot of people looking for meaning, looking for depth, looking for impact. And gosh dang it, I'm so actually like optimistic about where we're headed because of that. If I was sitting here telling you, I have not had my phone ring in, 8 months since we launched Kind World Collective, I'd be worried about the greater good and where we're headed collectively. And it's been the opposite. It's been so many people reaching out being like, this sounds interesting. It sounds like something I want to do and I want to integrate into my life. Can you help? Both on the candidate and client side. So I just wanted to underscore, yes, purpose. It does start with purpose. We all fundamentally need it. There's all the stats out there. I mean, preparing for this podcast, I was like, I've got the Deloitte and McKinsey and all the numbers that back up purpose-driven employment and why it's important. But honestly, I don't want to talk about those numbers. I just want to talk about the people that show up and say, this is where I want to be in life and this is the work I want to do.
Firstly, thank you for underscoring my point.
You're welcome.
I appreciate that. No, but I mean, it's a shared understanding between you and I here, right? Yeah. So I think we're doing this volley of underscoring each other's point, which is shared, and that is that every single human being is interested in meaningful behavior, activity, outcomes, engagement, work. They made it, the term purpose may be nebulous to them as at a cerebral level, but we all understand it at a heart level, at a soul level. We understand, and it is, I think, an innate characteristic of the human species that we want to know that what we're doing is meaningful. You know, looking back on our lives as we're sitting, you know, on our deathbed and going, you know, what I did mattered. That is something, that is a gift that today you get to work on giving your future self. You can start that today, regardless of what age you are, what your rap sheet looks like, you know, what your career path has been, or what you've done that had negative impact or was a bad choice or harmed people or the environment. Those things are bygone. And today is today. And now we have this opportunity to go, wait a minute. I need to change something. I need to take steps to doing something in a better way, finding more meaning in what I do, supporting companies that are doing things that are good in the world, causing no harm, environmental sustainability, positive social impact initiatives. You know, today is a new day, right? As they say, right? 30 years ago was the best time to plant a tree. Well, the second best time is today. Now. So, you know, start planting those seeds. Start, you know, find Kind World Collective, help them help you to find the company that you can become a part of, to start doing that good work in the world. Or if you're that company and you want to start doing good work in the world, man, they got to find you. They really have to find you.
Well, and then I'll have to jump in and just say, like, that has been one of our biggest challenges, right? Being a new player on the scene, and is really getting in front of the companies that are building and scaling and hiring and growing with this unique approach to recruiting. And what I would say about that is, I think there's this understanding or belief that I can only hire a recruiter when I get here, when I get to this, like, you know, when the profit and loss sheet looks like this. And what I tell people is, just call me. We'll talk. We'll figure it out. Like, I'm here to help. And yes, there's a value for my service and my team's service, and we're very clear on that value, but we will meet people where they are. I mean, one of my favorite recruitments was with a tiny little startup that was building something pretty incredible, you know, biodegradable clothing, plastic-free clothing. And you know, this person who started the brand is pretty incredible and has a really strong vision of what he wants. It's called Unless Collective, unless you want to check it out. But really, you know, it was like day 2 of the shop being open that he called me and said, "Hey, Tauna, like, can you help me build this thing? Can we find some folks that really care about, you know, environmental impact and building sustainable clothing and really, you know, biodegradable clothing," which is next level, by the way. But all of it to say, companies like Unless that are small, still building, give us a call. We're happy to help. And then all the way up to our big enterprise clients like Nordstrom, where we hired the head of sustainability and human rights and social impact. We work with everyone, but we will always center our value and our focus and what we're here to do in the world on purpose. So working with companies that see that vision and believe in that space as well.
Man. So for those folks who are listening as employers, business owners, entrepreneurs, or, man, I got to get away from this snake of a company that I work for and I want some meaning and purpose in my life. How do they find you and how can they come to work with you?
So super easy in terms of just kindworldcollective.com. So you can check out our website and there's a contact us page there. So anyone can reach us there. I'm also on LinkedIn far more than I'd like to admit.
I see you.
it's LinkedIn has its benefits, but it's hard to keep up. But I will say, if someone did find me on LinkedIn, it's just Tauna Dean. They can reach out to me there, and then obviously the website Kind World Collective. And I'm sure if some people know you personally, Brandon, you can get us connected, which you've done already, and I'm very appreciative. But we're really. Let me put it this way. When we talk about building a kinder, cleaner, and more connected world, that is no small feat, and we're not doing it alone. So we want to meet folks that care about the same type of things that we do, that believe in everything we just spoke about for the last hour. And so I just kind of do an open invitation to get in touch. Let's chat. Yeah. Let's see where we can take this thing. And we're going to do it together. It can't be done alone.
I am affirmed that we are not meant to.
No, exactly.
That's not encoded.
That's right.
We are all, as human beings, fully encoded with interdependence. Period. Yes. Just like everything else in nature, interconnected and interdependent.
Yes.
And that's just the path forward. So the fact that you are a champion of it, I will call you a pioneer in your space, because you're doing things in a way that very few, if any, are really doing. And you're doing it from a place and with a set of experiences that nobody else brings to the table. Nobody else has your unique experience and perspectives because, well, they haven't lived your life. So, the way that you go about it, and, when I saw that post, when your recruiter is doubling down on kindness, right? That's when you got the right recruiter. So I really look forward to seeing everything that blossoms through and with Kind World Collective, with the folks that I've connected you to. I really do hope that they take that initiative. I think my buddy is really ready for the scaling out of his company and adding in folks who believe in the mission, will bleed, sweat, and cry for it, and come back tomorrow. And I know you're the one to help them find it. So thank you so much, Tauna, for coming on the show. I appreciate all that you are and all that you do. And I just really look forward to what the future brings. So thanks for coming on.
Thank you so much for having me, Brandon. It was a pleasure, and look forward to talking again soon. Thank you.
Indeed. All right. Take good care. Bye, everybody.
You too. Bye-bye.
If you like what you've heard, make sure to subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. For even more inspiration, head over to our YouTube channel, Leave It Better with Brandon Trammell, and subscribe to watch videos from podcast episodes, gain insights around getting right with your money, and achieving contentment in a crazy world. And remember, wherever you go, whoever you're with, whatever you do, always aim to leave it better than you found it.